Sal Paolantonio with us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Football, NFL, Super Bowl, championship weekend, Eagles. We've got it all right now with our friend Sal Paolantonio here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Well, I said to start the show, Sal, that the fact that the Patriots do this every time, they come back, they win that game all the time, makes what the Eagles did last year even more special.
Oh, there's no question about it. There's no question about it. You have to look at what the Eagles did last year in that Super Bowl, and you just have to say to yourself, wow, that was some coaching job and some clutch play by that quarterback, Nick Foles.
It really was. I mean, and just like I wanted to put the listeners in a good mood, like smile. You know, yeah, you can't win it every year, but the fact that you beat the Patriots in that fashion, where they win that game all the time, and they did it on Sunday, and Bob Sutton fired possibly for not understanding that, hey, the Patriots do this every single time. You might need to change things up here, Bob.
Well, you got to look at the three Super Bowls that Tom Brady and Bill Belichick have lost. What is the one common denominator, Mike Gill? And it is pass rush, especially fourth quarter pass rush. You got to generate pass rush. You got to get in Tom Brady's face. Steve Spagnuolo did it with the New York Giants. The Eagles eventually did it in the fourth quarter. It was the strip sack by Brandon Graham. I know that my book is called Philly Special because named aptly after one of the most improbable plays in Super Bowl history. But the best play by any player in Eagles history was Brandon Graham's strip sack in the fourth quarter against Tom Brady. You have to generate pass rush. You have to generate pass rush, especially in the fourth quarter. And that means you have to blitz. Look at the guy who had success against Tom Brady in the AFC East, Rex Ryan. He was not afraid to blitz Tom Brady and to make Tom Brady make a choice. Hold the ball and get sacked, throw it away, get intercepted, but, you know, not just stand back there, pat the ball like he was playing on Turkey Bowl Day.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned Spagnuolo, and his name has kind of come up. We're actually going to have Spags on later this week to talk to him more about that. But he's also one guy, as you mentioned, that came up with a game plan to kind of stop Brady here. And, you know, I'm interested because Wade Phillips is on the other side. And these two guys have matched up a bunch, Brady and Wade Phillips. So I think that's something that maybe should be looked at a little deeper.
You got to blitz Tom Brady. You don't have to blitz him every down, but certainly more than once on 3rd and 10 in overtime. You got to get in his face. And Spagnuolo authored the first Super Bowl defeat and then the second one of Tom Brady with Michael Strahan and Justin Tuck and the rest of that, and Osi Umenyiora, that group. And then last year, eventually they got to Tom Brady. Didn't get to him as early as a lot of people would have liked, but you got to generate pass rush, and maybe Wade Phillips has figured that out. He did it in the AFC Championship game several years ago in Denver when they went on to win the Super Bowl, Peyton Manning at quarterback, and they had Von Miller as the MVP of the Super Bowl. They generated pass rush against Brady in Denver. I covered that game. And then the Super Bowl against Cam Newton. I covered that one too. You've absolutely got to get the pass rush going against Brady or you're toast.
You brought up a stat to me earlier before the show, Sal, about the quarterbacks. 226-2 record when their team scores 40 points or more. Patrick Mahomes, who is excellent, is just 3-2 in those games. I guess that speaks more about Bob Sutton than it does Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and about the head coach, too, Andy Reid. He's got to realize he's got a Ferrari in Patrick Mahomes. And he's going to score 30, 40, 50 points on any given day. Brady's 41-0 when he scores 40 or more. Peyton Manning, 32-0. Steve Young, 19-0. Phillip Rivers, 16-0. Jim Kelly, 15-0. Joe Montana, 14-0. Brett Favre, 14-0. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. Only Drew Brees has lost one, and Aaron Rodgers lost one. Patrick Mahomes has already lost two. He's only 23.
Yeah, Tom Brady's 41-0 is unbelievable in that compartment there. when his team scores 40 or more.
And you should be 41-0 when you score 40 or more. You're supposed to play defense.
Yeah, that's true. In this league, they don't want you to play defense anymore. But Andy needs a new defensive coordinator. Spags, Rex Ryan's name's been mentioned. It'll be interesting to see what happens out there because that Kansas City team with Mahomes, they should get more cracks at this thing.
And, the bottom line is both of those defensive coordinators, former defensive coordinators, Rex Ryan, Steve Spagnuolo, know how to blitz the quarterback, Mike.
Spagnuolo, very good, yes. Rex Ryan, probably that's what he does best, right? Sends you the different looks there. That would be, could Andy coexist with those type? Spags we know, but Rex Ryan would be interesting.
Oh, it would. I don't know about Rex because, Rex, he's had successful head coaching tenures, somewhat successful. Although he hasn't had a hint of any of these jobs that have opened up. But I wonder, listen, Rex Ryan is a great defensive coordinator. So is Steve Spagnuolo. And both of them failed, as head coaches overall in their records. I think Andy could coexist, obviously, with Spagnuolo. They have the same agent. They know each other from Philly. So I think Spagnuolo's probably got the inside track.
All right. Sal Powell's with us. I want to go back to Championship Sunday. The officiating is getting a lot of conversation, the missed call. But I almost look at the call against Brady, the roughing the passer. I mean, they gotta re-look at the way they're calling these games, Sal.
Well, I think they will. Mike, certainly the missed call in New Orleans was the most egregious in NFL postseason history, and that should generate a lot of discussion at the owners' meetings. And they've got to look at the possibility of having every play reviewable. The Bill Belichick rule that he's tried to put into place. I think they've got to look at that for sure.
The pass interference.
And some people need to be held responsible too. Those are fireable offenses. I mean, they just are. I'm sorry, they just are.
Oh, I agree. And the pass interference challenging, can that really work?
Try it, right? You'd have to. It's one of those things where you have to give it like a try in the preseason, and you have to figure out whether or not there are unintended consequences as a result of. So let's say you open up a pass interference call to replay, and then during the replay review, you notice that there was holding before that, and so you decide to. In other words, can you go back and call a penalty based on a review of the penalty that was called?
Right.
So you'd have to write that in.
Well, here's something. But here's something like that frustrates me. Is the helmet-to-helmet calls that sometimes aren't helmet-to-helmet, but the hit looks violent in real time. Can't someone look at that and say, nope, it wasn't helmet-to-helmet. You threw the flag for safety reasons, but we're gonna negate that.
Yeah, I know. It's a Pandora's box.
Yeah.
There's no question about that.
And those games were pretty – I mean, that fourth quarter, I was watching the game with my girlfriend, and I said, this game had 49 seconds in it 45 minutes ago. They couldn't get through a minute of that game, and it seemed like it was taking forever because of all the challenges and the replay reviews, which I know you want to get it right, and it's not like I'm leaving the couch or anything, but, man, to add more challenges and stuff is I don't know. I don't know if that would deter the viewership or not.
It was a long day in Kansas City. I got to the stadium at 8 a.m. and didn't leave till midnight.
Now, let me ask you. You were in Minnesota last year. It was freezing in Minnesota. How did that compare to Kansas City on Sunday?
Yeah, well, the U.S. Bank Stadium is a dome.
Right. Well, I'm talking about when we had to go to the Mall of America every day. It was – to walk from the shuttle to the mall was
the last outdoor playoff game in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, Seattle at the Vikings. It was minus 33 the day Bud Grant came out in his shirt sleeves. That was easily the coldest I've been.
Oof.
But, at some point, ESPN's just going to say, Sal, why don't you cover the game from Miami?
Well, isn't that who's Darlington always gets the rain, right? I mean, he's outside in the rain all the time. When he's got to cover those games, it seems like everywhere they send that poor guy, he's getting some sort of weather. But did the weather – it didn't affect that game, right? Because I saw you earlier on a report that the field was completely snow-covered, but that never really played a factor in the game?
I don't think it did.
No. All right, let's set up this Super Bowl a little bit here. You got, which I find is interesting. 2002 is when the Patriots started this whole thing. They upset the Rams, and here they are now. The Rams are back, and the Patriots are still going, and it's kind of McVay against Belichick, future against past. I find it to be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, it is. And McVay was 14 years old when the Rams beat the Titans in Atlanta for the Super Bowl. He was at that game and 14 years old. So just imagine that, where he was, those many years ago, watching the game with his parents in the stands. Now he's coaching against Bill Belichick, who had won the Super Bowl the year before. It's an interesting matchup, and it basically boils down to this. Can Wade Phillips generate pass rush against Tom Brady? It's the old Jim Johnson rule of thumb. Mm-hmm. You want to bring the house without giving up the house. And so they got to do that in this game in order to be successful against Brady long term, and especially in the fourth quarter. And then it's Jared Goff and that offense against Bill Belichick and Brian Flores, who's been making the calls on defense. And what you saw is they took away Tyreek Hill, which is what they do. That's their MO. And they will take away the best player on the field. And they took Hill away. And he just was a non-factor in the game. And I don't really see that outlier of a player on the Rams offense, Mike. I don't see there was one player in that Rams offense that you must take away. I thought it might be Todd Gurley. Uh-huh. But that they sort of took Gurley away on their own without the Saints' help. So I think in this particular game, I'm kind of surprised that the Patriots are not 6-point favorites.
What is it, 2? Yeah, 1.5.
It's 1.5, and are the Patriots 1.5-point favorites?
Yeah, Patriots by 1.5.
Yeah, I think the Patriots should be a 6-point favorite in this game.
Okay, I like that because, and this is interesting because I think the underplayed story here is that Rams defense, I agree with you. I don't know how the Rams defense keeps Brady in check.
No, I don't either. And I don't think the Rams can score enough points.
All right, I got to, come back home to Philly here and see what's going on here. You've probably heard about the piece by now, kind of talking about Wentz and calling him out a little bit here. You've been around this game a long time. It's not all that surprising, right, that this story is a story. It's just that it's out there and that people have because this goes on in locker rooms. Not everybody likes everybody.
Well, what are you specifically asking me here, Mike? Because, the report it wasn't executed properly.
Right.
So to me, if you're going to do a story that calls Carson Wentz selfish and basically uncoachable or disagreeable,
uncompromising,
you need to have somebody on the record, and that didn't happen.
Uh-huh.
And, that reporter was in the locker room when Carson Wentz was available to the media before the team dispersed.
Right.
Never asked him. He was in the press conference with Doug Peterson, Howie Roseman. Never asked him.
Yeah.
If he's been talking to people over a period of months, he had plenty of opportunity to get the reaction of a lot of players on the record. Go up to Zach Ertz and say, this is what I'm hearing. Mm-hmm. Go up to Carson Wentz and say, this is what I'm hearing. So I don't really put much truth at all. And just from my perspective and observation, having been with that young man on that team since the day he was drafted, the word selfish would be as far away as possible from any description that I would have of Carson Wentz. He is the most selfless person that I've ever come across in a locker room. Is he demonstrative? Sure. Mm-hmm. Is he demanding? Absolutely. He's a quarterback, and he wants to succeed. Is he different from Nick Foles in personality and approach? Definitely. Do players like both of them? Yes. Do they like one another? Absolutely they do, and there's plenty of of anecdotal evidence to go along with that. You got to remember, when Nick Foles was the pilot of the team in the Super Bowl run, Carson Wentz was there with him in that quarterback room. Carson Wentz is, and I wrote about this in my book, Fletcher Cox would be the first defensive player to arrive in the parking lot in late December and January last year in the Super Bowl run. He always would see Carson Wentz's truck there first. And he would be in that quarterback room side by side with Nick Foles and John DeFilippo and Nate Sudfeld. And they'd be going over the tape.
Yeah.
And the game plan. Selfish? No way. No way.
So what's next for Nick? What happens? Where does this story end for Nick? I mean, the fairy tale, it's got to end, right? He can't be in Philly anymore.
Mike, there are a lot of different ways that this can go. I don't think any of them end up in Philadelphia.
Yeah. Let me ask, can it not be him in Philadelphia because him and Carson can't coexist any longer, like that dynamic?
No, that has nothing to do with it. It's money. It's about money.
Okay, I'm just clear. Yeah. I'm just making sure that's because when Garcia was here, they couldn't bring Garcia back. They couldn't bring Garcia back, right? When McNabb was here, they couldn't bring Garcia back here. It would have been anarchy.
Completely different situations.
Right.
They can't afford both of them long term.
Gotcha.
And they understand that Carson Wentz long term is the franchise quarterback. I think you try to keep Nick Foles. I think it's really hard to do. I think Nick Foles would like the opportunity to be a full-time starter someplace. So where does he go? Well, I think Jacksonville is definitely number one on the list with John DeFilippo there as the offensive coordinator. I would say the Denver Broncos are a distinct possibility. I think the Carolina Panthers are a dark horse here.
Huh.
I think the Giants, not so much. I believe Eli Manning's going to come back, and he will be the veteran stopgap when they draft a young quarterback. So I would take the Giants almost out of the equation. But it would surprise me if you went to the Giants. Another possibility is the Washington Redskins, and then don't forget about the Dolphins. So I would say if I were putting it in order right now, it would be Jacksonville, Denver, Washington, Carolina, Giants, Dolphins.
Very interesting for Nick. I certainly know that everybody's going to be keeping their eye on this, but I'm interested to see how he fares in his next stop. I hate to see him go the route of the guys that the Eagles have traded away before. And
we wish him the best.
Sure.
We just definitely wish him the best. And we wish Carson. Listen, I always say we are living in the best time ever for Eagles football when you have great young leaders on your team like Carson Wentz, like Nick Foles, and you have a great coach who's going to be here for 5-6 years. I think I might have said this to you before. If Carson Wentz is healthy, they'll win 2 more Super Bowls with Carson Wentz easy in the next 5 years.
Yeah. I want to ask you about Brandon Graham because you said it, and I agree with you. I said the day after the Super Bowl, it's the most impactful, important play in the history of the franchise. So he'll be 31 in April. Sentimental or worth keeping? How do they play that out?
Good question. It depends. His agent is pretty aggressive, Joel Siegel. So I would anticipate that they will try to get as much money as possible from somewhere. He's already won his ring, so now he's got to get one more good deal left. I would try to keep him as you got to have a pass rush, and he's still pretty effective. Mm-hmm. So I would try to keep him, but they're under a serious salary cap stress right now. So I don't know how it's going to play out.
Sal Paolantonio will be in Atlanta, Super Bowl 53, and I will meet up with you down there. It should be a lot warmer than it was in Minnesota, thankfully. And we got an entertaining game at least. I was kind of hoping to see Andy, and unfortunately no Andy, right? I mean, is he ever going to get one, or is this going to be Andy's legacy? Will he be the guy that was great but just never got one?
I'll tell you this. If he hires Spagnuolo, he's got a chance.
If he hires Spagnuolo, okay, yeah, then he's got a chance. Yeah, they got to get some better. They got to get some more on that defense, but having Spagnuolo gives them a little different look. In with the Eagles, real fast before we let you run here, Howie Roseman, important. I mean, do you look at him under the gun now, or is this just hey, they're in good shape, they're in good progression of where they are, or is he got an important offseason here?
Oh yeah, you got to get back. There's a different expectation now, Mike Gill. You got to get back. And the best way to get back is to get healthy and get a running back. Yeah. Get a running back, Mike. Come on.
All right, draft time is coming. And pick 25 for the Eagles. We'll see running back. We'll see if they go defense. Howie mentioned defensive line, and I can't I'm excited for the draft, and I'm excited for the offseason because you're right. Let's see what he does to get them back here. Patriots, Rams, Atlanta. My friend, I'll see you down there.
Hey, good. You inviting me onto your show down in Atlanta? Beautiful. All right, thanks, Mike Gill.
Here's the big question. Will Chick-fil-A be open on Super Bowl Sunday?
See you later, man.